everyone. I welcome you all to Kind Theory's very first book reading. But before we start, sincerely, your autistic child. But before we start, I would like to give you all a brief information about Kind Theory. Kind Theory started as a simple idea, making this world a kinder place for the neurodivergent people, a place that promotes their strengths, supports them through their struggles, and celebrates their differences. Now, as a nonprofit organization, we are working to make that idea a reality. So the question is, how are we doing that? So we do this by creating free educational resources about autism, neurodiversity, and ADHD through extensive collaboration with members of the autistic and ADHD communities. We do this by connecting community organizations to a network of neurodivergent professionals who train and educate on inclusion, supports, and justice for the autistic and ADHD communities. Now, as organizations, we all have limitations in terms of funding. So because of that, we are right now focusing only on autism and ADHD, but we hope to expand as time goes by. We also empower these marginalized individuals by amplifying their voices so that more people can learn from their insights. We ask what programs and supports will help, and we work towards making them a reality, and all while offering them meaningful paid opportunities. So here at Kind Theory, we believe that autism and ADHD are natural variations of the human mind, and that respect, understanding, and concrete support puts all of neurodivergent people on the path to wellness, belonging, and joy. We believe, all of us at Kind Theory, we believe that a better world is worth it. Now I know you all are really looking forward to, meet with the authors of the book, Sincerely Your Autistic Child. We will get to it in just a bit, but I just wanted to kind of touch a bit on the Autism Acceptance Month. With it being the Autism Acceptance Month, I request you all to download the campaign #4Change app on your mobile phones. Kind Theory has partnered with Campaign and has created a challenge, Acceptance Over Awareness, because we believe that we're at that point to take that step, moving from awareness towards acceptance. And by participating in this challenge, you will help us create neurodiversity and autism acceptance, as well as extend our reach. Once you download the app, you will be asked to sign up with your Google account. Please search for Kind Theory or #Accept the Neurodivergent Brains in the Challenges tab of the app. Join our challenge and simply complete all 4 actions. It's very easy. You just need to take pictures or write simple definitions and post it on there with the #Accept the Neurodivergent Brains. Your 5 minutes can make a huge difference and will help us get that much closer to our mission. So with that being said, now we move forward to what you all have been waiting for, our book reading, Sincerely Your Autistic Child. I'm really excited about this. You can probably see it from my face. I'm unable to hold my excitement, but before we move on to the actual book reading, I want to introduce you all to Kayla Rodriguez and Moren Onayu. So Kayla Rodriguez is a Puerto Rican autistic adult in Georgia by way of her native New York. She was trained in the Bobby Dodd Institute Ambassador Program, the Georgia Lent Leadership Education in Neurodevelopment Disabilities Program, and the My Voice, My Participation, My Vote program to be a skilled advocate. She has spoken on several panels, and she was recently recipient of the Goldie Award for Young Community Advocate and the Bobby Dodd Institute Empowers Luminaries Award. Wow, Kayla. And completed a policy internship at the Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities, and previously served as Vice President and Chief Ambassador of Autistic Self-Advocacy Atlanta, an affiliate group of the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, ASAN. Kayla is the Executive Advisory Committee Vice Chair for the Autistic Women and Non-Binary Network, AWN, a founding member of the WEI North, the American Gender Disability Alliance, and she also has authored a chapter in the edited collection, Sincerely Your Autistic Child. Now, I'm honored to have you here, Kayla, and I am just the biggest supporter of you all here. I'm so grateful for all of you to come together and write this book for us. Being a parent of a neurodivergent child and being neurodivergent myself, I feel like this was a strongly needed initiative. Now, I would like to introduce Moren our board member, and I am so proud of her and everything that she does. Moren is a global advocate, educator, disabled person of color, and parent of children on the autism. She is also a prolific writer and social scientist or activist whose work focuses on intersectional justice, meaningful community involvement, human rights, and inclusion. Moren is a recognized leader in various social justice activism endeavors. Moren is a highly sought after public speaker, trainer, and consultant who has presented at the White House, the United Nations, and numerous peer-reviewed international conferences. She works collaboratively with various entities, including the International Autism in Black, Autism Intervention Research Network on Physical Health, the National Research Center for Parents with Disabilities, the National Mental Health and Developmental Disabilities Center, the Cambridge University Autism Center for Excellence, and the Stanford University Neurodiversity Project to address the needs of underrepresented and marginalized individuals and groups. Now, I would like to flag here that I didn't give the entire bio of these two super women who were here, but there's so much more apart from this to them. And I would love for you guys to explore the organizations, other organizations that they are a part of, and see what other projects they are working on and support them in however way you can. So guys, we are now going to actually start with our book reading, but I would like to start us off with one question to both of you. What led to the formation of this book? How did this book come into existence? What was the need all the contributors identified that led to, this book?
Well, hello everybody. I'm honored to be here. I think this is a question that Moren should answer because I was just added as an author like later down the line. But Moren was involved from the beginning in the creation of this wonderful book. So
I'd be happy to, but I do want to say that Kayla is being very modest. We hand-selected every single author for this book, and Kayla was one of our top choices. So, but what she is saying is correct. This is actually a republication, so it's both an old and a new book. Autistic Women and Non-Binary Network, which was formerly the Autism Women's Network, was created several years ago by a parent who was frustrated at not being able to find information that was relevant to different groups. And it was something that was started in a living room and blossomed into an organization. So a lot like what Time Theory is doing. And so there was a time that the organization had and they still do occasionally have some publication imprints. One was called Dragon V Press. And they had released some publications from that. And so years later, Beacon Press, who is a social justice and independent nonprofit publisher in Massachusetts, it's been around for over 100 years, reached out to AWN with an interest in the book. But AWN had changed over time. When they had first started, their focus was on women and girls, wanting just the voices of women and girls because they were underdiagnosed. Many of the books were giving advice about how to do this with your son, but very little about if you had a child that was not a son. And over time, AWN realized, there's a lot of things that are relevant for people, period. If you have a daughter, if you have a son, if your child's non-binary, just for being a parent, and there's things in general that are beneficial for people to know, and we'd really like to address that because there are parents giving one another advice that is well intended but not always accurate, and children sometimes can't really articulate their circumstances, their situations. So the book was written kind of like a love letter because parents, if you're a parent or a teacher or whomever, but particularly a parent, that's your child. You've been there since day one. You know the things that they like to do. You know their smile. You every story, you might not share their neurology, or that's your child, you know them. And then the authors bring the perspective of having been an autistic child at one point. So they may not have been your child, but they certainly know what worked and didn't work, what helped and didn't help in their lives. And unfortunately, a lot of their parents did not know. And as a result, there were some hardships. And so what better way to give back than to prevent this new generation from having to deal with any of those hardships? Taking that knowledge, taking the intimate knowledge of your child and the intimate knowledge of an autistic brain of a child and a teen and adult, and and so that's really how the book came to be, because people were guides written by clinicians and all of these different people, or but not with people. And essentially the partner forward and are written by non-autistic parents who have autistic children, and then the remainder of the chapters are all written by a range of autistic contributors of different ages and backgrounds, from different parts of the world, all sharing things that they wish their parents would have known, or advice for parents today, and just kind of trying to provide that helpful insight. And we've just been really happy actually being here with you all on about this. It's just a little bit over a year old, and it has received a starred review from the Library Journal. So we're just really ecstatic. We think it's the most comprehensive book of this type that exists today, talking about autism and parenting in this capacity.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Kayla, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was honored to be picked for the book, and yeah, it's a great book. Some people I know have written chapters in the book, and so it's just a really great work of to help work of art people, and I'm glad to have been part of it. Very glad.
Well, we were, it's very beneficial to us as parents. And then a lot of, when I hadn't read the book and I hadn't bought the book, and I was in touch with various institutions, education providers, the first thing they said to me is that this is a great book for educators. And I feel like when I got this book and I read, and especially Moren, one of your poems in the book, I resonated with it so hard. And when you look at your child, you can somehow tell when they're going through something, right? And so parts of the book, resonated with me, and I felt like they resonated with my child as well. Now, he's too young to say it verbally, and explain it as an author or as a writer, but in so many words that he lets me know, and it's just beautiful to see that all compiled in this book. So here's what we're going to do. Tanya, do you have any specific paragraph? Tanya is one of the parents here with us today. And Tanya, if you have any paragraph that you want to read out and ask them questions about, we would welcome you to come on board. If not, then Morenike and Kayla, one of you can start with a few of your favorites, and then in the end, I might ask you guys a few questions and read a few lines. Those resonated with me the most, and then ask you questions about that. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
All right, Tanya, do you have any paragraph that you'd like to read, or do you have any questions, or should we move on with Morenike and Kayla?
I don't have a specific passage. Actually, what works for me in my brain is I listen to audiobooks. It's how I can actually process when I'm reading. But I just appreciate, I have an autistic 2-year-old son, and I appreciate, even though he's not a girl, but having the different perspectives of hearing from autistics of what was helpful or what they wish parents and teachers know is so helpful for me, because I have a neurodiverse nephew who has Tourette's and ADHD, and I know how the school system harmed him. And having this book, I'm putting it in my arsenal to include for when he does start the 3 to 5 program at the school, of giving it to his teacher saying, hey, I'd like you to read this to give you a different perspective, because, you know, to me, especially like you were talking about educators, people so many times focus on the behaviors or the outward forms of neurodiverse people versus seeking to understand and accept the person the way they were built, or that they have to be cured. And I'm like, you don't have to be cured. You're just wired differently. And so I just appreciate the positive messaging in the book.
Thank you. If I could actually say something, if it's all right, Tanya, I just really appreciate your comment, because, it's important to me that, you know, you've mentioned that you like audiobooks, because I think that, you know, when you think about the concept of neurodiversity, that just like we have, people have different heights and different blood types and different preferences, we all, you know, all human beings have different minds. Even individuals who are neurotypical still differ from one another. And so I really appreciate you mentioned that, because it was intentional that we wanted, you know, and we were just so grateful that Beacon as a publisher wanted the book to be accessible. So we have the audio book, we have the ebook, we have the print version, and then we have, you know, some translations in multiple languages, which ones have been released first. But that was something that's so important, and, you know, and then of course, like the Braille versions of the book, because people all learn in different ways. And what you mentioned about your son, you know, when he's in school, you know, and just making sure that you are being proactive and people have an understanding that you might see this, but that doesn't necessarily mean this. It could mean this. And for people not to use, not to misunderstand behavior, but then also to understand the behavior of communication and what is it trying to communicate. And so that was so key for us, and that's why we wanted to have contributors who were non-speaking or minimally speaking, as well as people who spoke. Well, we wanted to have contributors who were fairly young, you know, very young adults, and then we got a couple grandmothers in there. So thank you so much for what you've shared, Tanya. That means a great deal to us.
Yeah,
Okay.
I echo Moren K. Thank you.
Okay, guys, whenever you're ready, Morenike, Kayla, whoever wants to go first, read one of your favorite passages from the book, and then we'll kind of move organically from there.
Okay. Kayla, you could,
would
you like to go first? Or?
first?
Sure, if you'd like to.
Yeah, I don't mind going first. So I'm going to be reading my chapter of the book specifically, if that's okay with y'all. One thing I have to share, like, I have OCD, so I have like reading OCD. So like, basically it's like, if I reread a couple of paragraphs, just make sure I read everything. It's like but like reading OCD is like for me, like if I have to reread stuff, yeah, I have to reread stuff over and over, so I can remember like every single little thing before I move on to the next sentence. So if I do that, please point that out to me. So I can
Kayla, I got an idea. Since we're all about accessibility here, how about, because you're also here to share your thoughts, I could read a portion of your chapter, and then I'll read a portion of the part that I was going to read, and that way you can just kind of share your thoughts. You don't have to feel like you have to read it aloud if that's comfortable for you.
Yeah, I guess I could read it.
Whatever you
read
prefer.
it, or whatever you want. How about
with either one.
do you want me to try? I could try to read it, and if I have difficulty, then you could read it. How about that?
Yeah, whatever you like. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, like, I'm not discounting your idea, am I?
No, you're not. It's totally cool.
Right. I just want to give it a try, and if I have to try, I'll give it to you. So this is at page 167 of the book, Safe Harbors in a Difficult World by me. So it seems like the world is against autism, and I'm here to tell you that's not right. When I look back on my childhood, I often remember how difficult it was, because being autistic didn't make it difficult. It was society's reactions towards autism. I mean, it was society's reaction to autism that often made it unbearable. I grew up at a time when I thought it was rare to be autistic because not only was I the only autistic girl I knew, but I was the only autistic I knew in general. Now I realize that being autistic wasn't rare, but people weren't diagnosed as often as autistic until later in life, which is unfortunately common, especially in girls and women. Women and other genders weren't being diagnosed because most autism research was centered around boys and men. The diagnoses are on the rise. Society's opinions of autism hasn't really changed. While people are not publicly trying to cure autism anymore, cure in parentheses, a lot of autism organizations, including Autism Speaks, still try to prevent and treat autism like it's some sort of terrible disease. Parents, as if it's some terrible disease. Parents often try to cure their autistic children by harmful means that will never work, like drinking bleach. The piece that is present in most of the logos of autism organizations, including the famous one by Autism Speaks, is viewed by many autistics to symbolize that autistic people are missing something. Then there's applied behavioral analysis, or ABA, which is a harmful therapy that most people recommend for young autistics, especially autistic children. There's also the high chance that autistic children can be bullied in school and called the R word and other harmful things, much like I was throughout school. Next page. My mother fought and advocated for me throughout school and helped me as I was bullied. However, not every autistic child is so lucky to have supportive and accepting parents. Some parents of autistic children even kill them because of their autism. This is why various disability organizations take part in the annual Disability Day of Mourning to remember those we lost this way. I think ASAM does Disability Day of Mourning, right? Yeah, they do. Okay. Then there's also the anti-vaccination movement, in which people believe that vaccines cause autism, even though this theory was proven false long ago. These people refuse to vaccinate their children and sometimes let their children get sick or die rather than get the recommended immunizations, because in their minds, being diagnosed as autistic is worse than death. It seems like the world is against autism, and I'm here to tell you that it's not right. Autism isn't a bad disease that needs to be cured, and it isn't worse than death. Vaccines don't cause them, and autistic people aren't missing anything. Autistic people are a whole, and we are people with feelings and thoughts just like everyone else. All autistics have a voice, even though some might express it differently, either through a device or if they are nonverbal or their social skill differences. We can't find love and have children and be successful in life. We just need support and accommodations to accomplish those things. We do deserve to live a fulfilling life. That's the first thing I want every parent of an autistic child to know. The second thing is, please don't ever hurt, abuse, or kill your autistic child. There's always a better solution than the temporary stress you're experiencing when raising your autistic child. The third thing is, make sure you're supporting a good organization that helps, supports, and advocates for autistics. Make sure their logo doesn't have a puzzle piece on it, and if they have a logo like the Infinity logo. Also, please side note, support AWN. That's a good one. That's a good one. If you need organization support, that's a good one. Where was I? Oh, this is because many autistics don't like the puzzle piece. Many autistics, including myself, see the puzzle piece like autistics are missing something crucial when we're not. Many autistics have that puzzle piece logo, and they try to cure, prevent, or treat autism. You should avoid donating to and supporting these organizations entirely. The ideal autism organization you should support or donate to shouldn't support ABA, and they should actually advocate for autistics, like by hosting Disability Day of Mourning or letting autistics know of good opportunities for employment, socializing, etc. They should have helpful resources to learn more about autism in a positive way, and social groups to make sure that your child isn't alone. They should not try to cure, prevent, or treat autism. They should try to instead to help and support autistics all throughout their lives, from childhood to adulthood, and promote and advocate for the rights of autistic people and autistic acceptance, not awareness. For the most part, people are now aware of autism. Hold on. Where was I? For the most part, people are now aware of autism, but they don't accept it. A great autism organization should be promoting acceptance, in addition to doing the things I mentioned before. Please, a great autism organization should be promoting acceptance, in addition to doing the things I mentioned before. Moren, did you want to pick up?
Hi, everyone. Is my audio okay? It's kind of being a little weird. Can you hear me decently? Okay, thank you. And so that's about half of Kayla's chapter. We had so many parts. I don't know if you all can see it. I've got like bunches of folded pages of stuff that we wanted to read, but we do want to be able to answer some questions too. So that is a teaser for Kayla's chapter. That's highly requested. That's about half of it. You have to either check the book out from the library or buy it to get the rest. I'm going to read a portion of chapter 6, which is from Lee Wiley Midsky. And so I'm going to read a few, about half of the first and second page, and then another part in the middle. And then we'll see if you all have any questions or if there's anything else we should discuss or share. And thank you all again. We could read this all day. I love this book. So this chapter is on page 31. And it is called Change the World, Not Your Child. Growing up, I wish my parents had known that teaching me to fight for my rights was more important than forcing me to fit in. I was conditioned early to know that saying no was not an option. Certain atypical behaviors needed to be eliminated, and being compliant made me good. I spent a lot of time learning to deny my natural impulses and feelings, opening myself up to become a victim of both emotional and sexual abuse. The way I experienced the world around me was supposedly wrong, and there was no argument. So I remained silent always. I am not writing this to blame my parents for the abuse that I endured at the hands of others. I honestly believe they did the best that they could. We are pushing back. We are fighting for our rights and the rights of your autistic children. When society tells us our lives are not valuable, we need the people who love us to stand with us and shout back, "You are wrong." As the parent of an autistic child, you cannot afford to be neutral. What I am saying is that your child cannot afford for you to hold back when taking a stand for their rights. Your child is autistic. Your child is disabled. These are not negative things. These things just are. Do you want your child to live in a world where it's okay to be viewed with pity, contempt, and fear? Or do you want to stand up, be an ally, and fight until your child's humanity and dignity are deemed just as important as any non-disabled person's humanity? This might sound scary, asking you to fight, and it is scary, I know that. The question you need to ask yourself is my child worth it? I promise you, the answer is always yes.
Can you guys hear me? That is beautiful. That was amazing. It's it's heartwarming to see the things we feel written down in those very accurate words. And the point is not to blame anyone over here. the point is to highlight that, disability is not something negative. Being autistic is not something negative. It's just another way of being. So, these two chapters, Kayla's chapter as well, and I do have a question about Kayla's chapter that we'll get to later after, we get done with this. But both of these chapters are beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate those words.
Thank you as well. And I just wanted to really state how, it's moving to, for me, like as Kayla mentioned, in the community, we come to support and rely upon one another. We view one another as colleagues and friends. And so a number of the contributors, and there are a few that are anonymous contributors, but others did, share their names. And people come from different walks of life and speak different languages and have different things going on. But there's, there was a recurring thing that we know that for the most part, it isn't that we're denying the fact that there are problematic individuals in the world who are abusive or harmful. We feel that parents, teachers, administrators, clinicians do want to do right. They just need the tools. And so that's what and the parents who did do right have made such a lasting impact on their children's lives. Later in Kayla's chapter, she talks about how her mother was a strong advocate for her, which was kind of the model for her to become, the advocate that she is today as a young adult. And there's some other chapters as well where people talked about their parents helping to translate the world to them and kind of giving them the time that they needed, or, letting them enjoy their special interests. And so parents, teachers, educators, you all can play such an important role. When we look back at our childhood, you could be that bright spot, in a world of darkness and a lot of memories of difficulty and tears. It could be you. And it would be really amazing for that whomever child is in your life or adult, if you are that person to them.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Moren, would you like to read another passage from the book? And then I would like to read a few lines of your poem that I love, if that's okay. And then we'll look towards the questions.
Sure, I'll read another quick part, and then and so Kayla, I know that we don't have time for the whole thing, but if you have a chance, if there's like another paragraph of your chapter that you'd like to read, because I just feel like there's so many good parts that I just hate to leave them on a cliffhanger. So I'll read a brief portion, and then I'll yield my time to you for the remainder of it, if that gives you some time to kind of select what you'd like to read.
Yeah, sure. I think I have an idea in mind of what I want to read.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to read. I have so many chapters that I love. It's so hard to pick. I love Haley Moss's chapter. I love Kassiana Asasamasu's chapter. But I'm going to read a portion of Amy Sequencia's chapter. We had several contributors who you type to communicate part of the time, but we had two individuals who do so 100% of the time. Amy was one of those. And so I just wanted to read a little bit from her chapter. And her chapter is called I Am an Autistic Woman. It is chapter 18. And so I'm going to read a portion from page 113 and 114. Here is one thing I wish my parents knew. My world was ever expanding, but I was being pulled back from it because everyone wanted to make me do and react to things as if I could experience them like neurotypicals did. They decided that my diagnosis, my identity was wrong and labeled me lower. My parents were exceptionally loving, but the information that was given to them was not about hope and accomplishments, but was about tragedy and resignation. I wish they could know what they learned later, that autism has gifts, like words, dancing to a symphony of colors, the unique physical sensations each one of them brings, that my expressions didn't have anything to do with what people were saying, but with everything. I wish they could know that my learning process was different, but efficient, and I could not learn anything if I was not given the opportunity and the materials to try. Being called low functioning
did a number on my self-esteem. My brain was already so abnormal. Why worry about how painful and debilitating things were? My parents believed in me, but they fell for the tragedy speech of the people with the right credentials. The fear-mongering was powerful. There are big implications and great damage that are caused by functioning labels. They dehumanize us. No neurotypical person would accept being called high functioning or to be called low functioning.
That was great, Moren K. That was just great. So I'm gonna read this. I'm not the only Kayla who wrote in this book. I'm gonna read some of Kayla, a friend of mine, Kayla Smith's book. Kayla Smith. You know, I'm gonna reread some of her chapter. Moren K, please let me know when to stop. The journey. I wish I wasn't so hard on myself back then. The journey of my life has been filled with joy, laughter, and excitement, as well as sadness, worry, and disappointment. In many ways, it may seem like they have a normal life, just like everyone else, but I know they don't. Whether I want to admit it or not, I often feel like I'm in my own little world and I don't belong anywhere. I relate to that, what she just said. I often feel out of place, and I don't know why I feel the way I do. Again, I also relate. I live in a world that doesn't see me as a human being because I am a Black autistic woman. I do not understand why the world dislikes me and wants me to assimilate to the standards of way a person should be like, instead of letting me and others who are different letting me and others who are different be ourselves at all. Until recently, I haven't spent much time reflecting upon the past, but lately I've been thinking a lot about my younger years up until recent days. As I look back at my life, I feel that I had a nice childhood. I liked spending the night at my cousin's house, having cookouts with my family, and going to school. I can't really remember everything from that time, but for the most part, I was just living life as a kid and all. I do have a supportive family. They love and adore me. At the same time, and even now, my family sometimes doesn't get or understand me, and I find myself getting very frustrated. When I was growing up, over time, I started noticing something that made me realize I was different from other kids. Like how I would go to speech therapy. I was nonverbal until I was 6 years old. How people would say, "Pray for Kayla," like something was wrong with me. And how I had people teach me life skills like how to count money, how to eat and spend, etc. Also in elementary school, I was in special education classes. I had regular classes too, because I have always loved learning no matter what the subject was. Science, math, history, English, my favorite subject is math. I was also tomboyish. I felt more comfortable with boys than with girls because in a lot of my classes, I was the only girl. And I think that's a nice tease for Kayla's good paragraph. The other Kayla.
That was great how you were like, okay, I'm going to read it from Kayla, but you didn't say which Kayla.
Right. Yeah, Kayla Smith. I'm sorry.
No, you did say that. I'm just joking. And just showing you all. We have a couple of people who have, whose names are similar in the book, and it's pretty awesome. And I really love that you read this part because Kayla is mentioning that despite not being able to speak until older than 6 years old, the family still enveloped and surrounded her with love and supported her. But she does know that she's different. And, I just really love her chapter because she also talks about being the only girl. And I think that a lot of times when you go to a lot of things that are related to ADHD and autism, you don't see a whole lot of people who are, who are, non-binary or a woman or a girl. There's a lot of overrepresentation of boys than men.
Definitely. And it's funny they brought that up because I started a girls group because a lot of the things I was in were I co-created a women's group because a lot of the things, autistic girls group, because a lot of the things I was in, I was the only girl. So I was like, let's create a space for girls, so for autistic girls. So I did. I mean, so well, I co-created it. I'm not. I can't say that I created it myself, but you know what I mean.
That is amazing. If you guys allow, can I read something that I strongly resonated with? And I resonated with it because I suffered through a massive, massive burnout with traumatization. And during that, I didn't figure out that it was a burnout. I blamed myself for being a failure. I felt that I was lazy, and I thought that everything that I wasn't able to do was my character trait instead of, understanding that there might be a difference in the way my brain works. And I maybe am trying to be an eagle in a sea full of fish. I did not understand that. So when I read this, I kind of, it's almost like, Morenica, you have written what I felt when I found out that my brain works differently. I'm not an eagle, I'm a fish. I was so happy to find that out. So this one's chapter 20, Finding Me, the Journey to Acceptance. Little Morenike, so strange, overly anxious at the prospect of change. Tiny hands flapping as she averts her gaze, twirling and spinning as if in a daze. Hyperlexic days, echolalic nights, migraines and meltdowns caused by fluorescent lights, or by a certain texture, smell, taste, or sound. They disturb her so much that she simply shuts down. The way that she thinks is so very literal, and the way she behaves, it's almost like a ritual. Things must be done in a particular way, or else she is unable to cope with her day. Social cues elude her, inferences too. So very smart, yet she doesn't have a clue. Naive and trusting, she is a manipulator's prey. Easy to fool because she believes what you say. Languishing in a world whose rules are unspoken, she is perceived as defective and broken. And so, when I was going through my evaluation, there was a question that was sent to my husband if he feels like I am easy to be manipulated. And he said that people take advantage of me so many times because I go with an instinct of trusting everyone. And I never realized that, that this is a cycle that keeps happening again and again and again. And so when I read this, I was like, it has come down to a full circle. So with that being said, I think we should start on the questions now. If you all are okay with that, give me a thumbs up if you're okay with that. And so I will start us off with asking a question to Kayla about her chapter. Kayla, you mentioned about ABA therapy. And now this is a very sensitive topic in the autistic community itself. When my son was diagnosed, the first therapy that he went through was ABA therapy. It was through a research, and they claimed that it was a new way of doing that therapy. And at that time, I didn't know of my own neurodivergence, and I was trying to get anything to help my child. So I started making contact and complying by measure success. And but then fast forward to when he entered school and his clinician recommended 4 hours of ABA, I was not okay with that. I was like, that's my child spending more than half of his awake time in behavior therapy, and I want to be able to spend more time with him. So I didn't pursue it any further. And then I started looking for more therapies. I connected with the autistic community, and that's where I learned that the connection between compliance and conversion therapies with PTSD and stuff like that. That being said, there is a strong kind of conflict between some autistic members within the community who speak in favor of the ABA therapy and who strongly advocate for it. In fact, I do know of one person who runs an ABA clinic. So for, from a neurotypical point of view, I want you to highlight, why would you not recommend, like the prime reason behind not moving forward with ABA therapy? And why do you think that there is a disconnect in regards to this therapy between the autistic community?
Well, good question. Well, first off, one of the things I want to point out is that your own son was recommended 40 hours. That's like a work day for like a kid. That's one of the reasons why I wouldn't do ABA, because like it's like a whole work day for like a kid. And then other reasons, like, it's abuse, it's reliance on reward. If you do something, you get a reward. Like they treat you like an animal, like they, you know what I mean? And it's also like, it is very abusive, even when it's like not, like quote unquote abuse. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like it's abusive, it's in all forms. I believe that even though people are trying to reform it, you still can't change the core of it, which is still on reform, trying to change autistics to be like neurotypical. We're fine just the way we are. And, the fact that we're rewarded like animals and we have to spend so many hours in there, it's just not right. And trust me, I know someone who recently, an autistic who actually working in ABA, but she's not more dog. And so I think, Autism Speaks, they still like recommend ABA. And I know someone from who's with some people who are with Autism Speaks again. I guess because they believe that it could be changed is why they're trying to, why it's causing such a division in the autism community right now, because they believe it can be changed and they agree with some of what they're doing. But for me and a lot of people, they still believe that it's wrong, and it is wrong. And it's because it's abuse. We're not animals. We shouldn't be spending a work therapy, and other reasons, it's just, and, some autistics, I was talking to an autistic on LinkedIn, and she was like, I don't know how else I could do ABA. I need ABA to help the autistic kids from hitting themselves. And I get it. I don't know the answer to that question, but I know there's always has to be another way. There's always a better way than ABA. There's, you know what I mean? I think there's always, like occupational therapy, this like giving kids the support that they need instead of trying to change them is what will help them. And you have to accept also too, like if they can't talk, like, they can't talk, you know what I mean? What were you gonna say?
Sometimes I think that using autistic traits to build therapies is going to be very helpful. So for example, special interests. My son, he used to tap his hands a lot. And so I figured out maybe drums would be a good option. And so
good idea.
I gave him drums, and it wasn't therapy per se, but it worked as therapy for him. And so
it gave him the input that he needed. I think that's what people think, like the creativity, like my son too, he always loves bouncing. Like there's a presentation that I give about a number of neurodivergent people into their strengths and their strengths to make change, being Temple Grandin, leading into that, the interest in animals, or, there's, Greta Thunberg, there's Armani Williams, the NASCAR driver, like a lot of these people, Anthony Hopkins, and in later, you know, I thought people different is a differences game, and any person, no matter what their neurology, is going to have some traits that need support, some you know flaws, and we're going to have strengths. And when you focus only on one at the expense of the other, it's problematic. And so I appreciate what both of you shared, because kind of what you were reading in the poem about being easily manipulated, I think about how many people, if it wasn't autism, we don't encourage that with other people. Like, I remember growing up when I was a little kid, my cousin, everybody at school saying, we're going to call you Sam because we can't say Osama. I'm thinking, what's so hard about Osama? You know, or we're going to call, you know, or one of my cousins, we're going to call you Mary. We can't say Miriam. I'm thinking it's not even, it's almost the same name. Or people saying, oh, you need to straighten your hair, or you need to, you know, do this or do that, because they wanted, it wasn't that they hated who you were, but they felt like it'd be so much easier if you just blended in with the other people. But blending those things away from who you are is chopping off core parts of who you are. And so we don't tell people that anymore. We don't tell people to hide those aspects of their identity. Why should people hide their neurology?
Yeah, speaking of which, I have like a thing coming out on special interests, and my special interest lately on AWN's blog coming out this week. So awesome. It's interesting. Yeah, like special interest is good, you know, and we should lean in more into that, like you were saying.
Absolutely. Tanya, is there anything, I know we're nearing the end of time, is there anything that your son, I know he's young, but has he shown an interest in anything? Is there something that he's like really into, like that he's passionate about? I love talking about people's interests.
Mm-hmm. Right now, his only interests really are spinning. He loves to spin. He likes watching his movies. We like all of his toys that have wheels that spin around. He is at this point non-speaking. I don't say non-communicative because he has language. It's just not the neurotypical way. He pushes you around. He not pushes you around in a mean way, but he guides you to what he wants. He communicates if you are willing to listen and to learn. I think the hardest part for me is when I went through his diagnosis, and I was a strong advocate because I knew something was off. Not that it was off, I just knew he was wired differently. So then it was getting him the support he needed because the world doesn't think like him. I'm fortunate there's a local organization in Dallas called, there's different parts of it now, but Hugs Cafe. And they hire and train neurodiverse, and special needs adults. A lot of their group is autistic. Ruth, who's the founder, goes to my church. So I work with those kids on a regular basis. I go up and volunteer at the cafe or go out to the greenhouse. And I take my son there regularly so he can see adults. Because not everybody is highly communicative in that group.
Yes.
So the hard part was hearing, well, he has, I almost think it's worse than it's not, you know, I know we talk about the functioning labels of, you know, being damaging, but like, well, he's high support needs. And I'm like, yeah, he's on a spectrum. It's where he's at right now because people have to learn his communication. But I always just tell people he's autistic and he needs support because we don't think the same way he does.
And he's only 2.
Right.
You know, so there's still a long way to go. Like, you know, but I really appreciate what you said about letting him see adults like him, because communication doesn't require speaking. You know, he's not, like you said, he's not nonverbal because he can communicate. He just may not do so with, you know, with words through his mouth. And so I love that you're having him immersed in an environment where he can have pride in people who, you know, it's like, hey, here's people who are just like you, working and living their lives.
Right. Yeah. Very much so. Sorry, he came in here and I'm like, what did you get into with your sister?
That's the story of my life too, so don't worry about that. One of the things that I would like to highlight here is now identifying support needs is an excellent way of, you know, going about it. But, you know, even I used to identify high or less support needs, but I feel like instead of even doing that, we could kind of name support needs. Because, you know, you don't necessarily have to say that, you know, this person has low or high support needs. Those are their support needs.
Yes.
you know?
And who are we
It's
to say
very
that they're
tough that
high
the
or
person
low
in wheelchair
in
requires-
comparison to what? Yeah.
Yeah,
So, you know,
so
I think it would be easier to say, you know, okay, well, you know, for communication, my child uses, you know, this, or for, you know, oh, you know, because of the fact that, you know, movement, you know, issues, you know, with development coordination. So we have this, or, you know, or what have you, or, you know, my child currently is incontinent, so we use these products, or, you know, I feel like we could say what is going on, because it's almost kind of like, have you ever been somewhere where someone mentioned the name of like a genre of music or a food and you've never heard of it before, but then when they started to describe it, you're like, oh, that, like, you know what it is, you just never knew what it was called. Once they started to tell you it's sort of like this, you're like, oh yeah, I've had that, I just never knew this was the name. And I think that's the case with a lot of, with our neurology, a lot of times, that people will understand us a lot better if we say, okay, my child doesn't speak, like you were saying, Tanya, this is what he needs, this, and this. It makes a lot more sense to someone, you know, and I just hope that in our world, we can learn to do that in general, you know, as a whole, you know, like, and that's why the subtitle of the book is what people knew about growing up, acceptance, and identity, because all people change, all people grow. And, you know, by virtue of being a human being, we deserve acceptance, and we deserve for people to celebrate and honor the identity that we have.
So, you know, moving
Definitely.
on. Yes.
I was going to say definitely. And I also like this conversation because I'm someone who needs support. I have support needs, and they're kind of more, maybe I would say more than most people, because I don't know how to drive or I don't know how to cook. And I'm trying to figure out, like, do I need a caregiver, or I have to learn these things independently, or, you know, which is stressing me out. But yeah, I just like this conversation. So thanks.
Of course. One of the things that I, you know, from an adult's perspective, stimming is very frowned upon if it's very visible. And so what I didn't refer to as stimming, turns out it was actually stimming, like taking the cap of the pen back on.
Twirling your hair.
And tapping your
Rocking
toe,
back and forth.
Yes.
rocking back and forth, and for me, chewing the insides of your cheeks. I mean, that's weird, but this is me. So,
Yes.
you know, I would like to ask both of you, for adults, what are some of the ways that you guys stim, you know, without the stimming being harmful to yourself? Do you have some recommendations for other adults out there?
Well, my main stim is really rocking back and forth. And like when I listen to music, I stim. Like it's kind of not weird, but like, you know, like I'm maladaptive daydream sometimes when I listen to music, and then that's how I stim through that. So
That's not weird. I do that too. Or maybe I'm weird, but I think it's cool.
No, you're not weird. It's just, yeah, that's what I do. I maladaptive daydream about something, and then I move my body around, and that's by stimming while listening to music. So
and I
as
think
long
it's important for people to, oh, I'm sorry, Carrie. My thing is delayed, so it's always hard to tell when somebody stops talking. My internet's
no, it's
delayed.
okay. Yeah, I was just saying, yeah, that's the way I stim, and hopefully it's not harmful. But what were you gonna say?
I was going to say that I've really been happy the last few years that more attention has been paid to the fact that human beings have different sensory needs. So many things that were not talked about, like people are starting to, you know, when people started using the fidget spinners and the Beyblades and the weighted blankets, these were things before that were difficult to find unless you pre-ordered them, or if your occupational therapy gave you one for to take home. And all human beings, you know, have, you know, self-stimulatory behaviors. They're different, but some of us have, you know, maybe more frequent ones or specific ones or more common need. And so I think that I would encourage people, there is a YouTube video, person, I think her name is Zim Gel Girl, but it's called Way to Stim Wednesdays. And she does not post anymore, but her archive shows different ways you can stim in different environments. One of which she shows like herself in a public library. So I think that people can do things like I have song lyrics that run through my head quietly. I'll move my tongue around in my mouth. Like, so let's say if you're in a place where you don't want to disturb people, you need to be quiet, right? So like, for example, this I like to stim with because it's not loud, it's a slinky, but I have other things that that might click that I might not use. I rock. I certain like you mentioned, music can be a STEM, walking a certain way, like kind of like, you know, the steps that I take. Certain jewelry can be a STEM, certain hairstyles can be a STEM, scarves can be a STEM, the texture is so soft and nice. And so I feel like there's a lot of things that people can use. And those things can really, really help you get through your day, you know, like your work day or your school day, or just, you know, having a rough day. I'll think about some stuff and I'll run it through my brain or whatever. And so I think that I encourage people, no matter what their neurology is, take some time to STEM. It can make you really happy, or it can make the time pass. And don't stop your children from STEMing if it's not harmful. Now, if it's harmful, obviously, yes. I've had some difficult ones that you mentioned. You know, there are harmful STEM, self-injurious ones. You know, hair picking, skin picking. You know, there's things that we can do that are not helpful, and we need to try to find adaptive behaviors to address that. But if it's just weird, but it's not hurting anyone, let the person be weird.
I'm going to move towards Tanya now. Tanya, I have a question for you as a parent. So, you know, as a child, as a parent of a child who's 3 years old or who's under 5, does your child experience any special sensory needs or sensory? Does he have any sensory challenges at all?
I can definitely tell. We just started DIR floor therapy. I absolutely love it. I was like you, Samar, when he got the diagnosis, they're like 20 to 40 hours of ABA a week. And I'm like, and when's he supposed to be a toddler? Yeah. I am absolutely against that. And knowing also what happened to my nephew in public school, I'm like, no, that's compliance based. That's harmful. I'm not going to do it. I'd already been reading Mona Delahook's book, which I recently found her. She's a long-term DIR. And I'm like, that's why some of this is. But to me, knowing that there's more than I don't remember ever growing up and hearing about all of them. So he is definitely one that I can tell when we're in newer situations, he's got a STEM. He's got to regulate and co-regulate. And for me, it's like when we're going someplace new, I'm talking him through it. I'm like, this is where we're going. This is what it's going to be. But also recognizing, like we went out for my niece's birthday the other day and it was loud in the restaurant. He got startled and I just took him outside and gave him some time to regulate and to run around over in a circle and get down on his level and then go back inside. And he was great. Well, we had a few more hiccups, but I'm going to expose him to all of those things, even though I know he likes to be rigid with his schedule at times, but still giving him those opportunities that I know it's going to be harder on me, but I'm going to so do it. And I mean, it's like I took him to a movie this weekend. Yes, I took a kid under 3 to the movies, but I mean, I took him to an afternoon showing. He loves the Harry Potter movies, so I took him to Dumbledore. And there was somebody who couldn't handle him standing up. Now I went to iPick, which has pods so you can move around a little more freely, but it was bothering some people. So we moved to a different area in the theater. Management was great in working with us, which was so nice. But I've just learned to advocate and try and ignore the idiots that are out there.
You know,
you are awesome. You are so awesome.
Seriously, because, you know, I think one of the most important things for us as parents to realize is that we and our children have as much right to the world as the rest of the people. Like, nobody can stop us from getting access to those rights. Nobody should stop from that. And if somebody is doing that, then, you know, I'm sorry to say they are in the wrong, not us. So I'm going to ask one last question. We are right around the concluding time for the session. So one last question on my part, and then Kayla, Moren, and Tanya, if you guys want to add anything, I would love for you to do that, and then we can wrap this wonderful session up, although I don't want to do that. But so the last question would be on perception of autism. A lot of people would say, you don't look autistic. And so it's, you know, it's kind of like people have they've formed a certain image of autism in their mind. And I, you know, and maybe I'm wrong, but I get offended when somebody tells him, don't worry, he will get better with time. I mean, I sometimes send it like, don't say that. I never say that to people who say that because I know that they're coming from a good place. Their intentions are good. But I don't see him as not better right now. I see him as this whole being. And instead of that, I wish people would say, don't worry, he will learn to deal with his challenges or something like that. My child is already the best that he is, and he works on himself so much harder than everyone else out there. And I think it's time for the other end of the world to work hard to kind of make the world more inclusive. So what's your take on the perception and this image of autism that's out there?
Well, for me, I'm like, it makes sense, because what is autism supposed to look like? What are we supposed to look like? What image of the stereotypical image of autism is supposed to look like? And there is none, because we're all different, and we all come in various races and genders and sexualities, and we're all different. And actually, I can relate to what you were saying about, because like my parents, especially my dad, he was like, you've gotten so much better from, we never thought like you would talk. And that hurts my feelings. like even my mom got into the action. And I praised my mom because she was like a great advocate for me, but she was also, kind of saying like, you've gotten so much better from when you were a kid and we were worried about you and everything. I know they both were coming from a place of love and concern, but that's just hurts my feelings, because they're thinking I was bad before, I was bad before. And it's mainly my dad that does. It's not really my mom, but it's just, I understand what you're saying, because that kind of hurts my feelings when my dad recently said that to me. And, it kind of hurt my feelings when he said that, because I wasn't bad before. I wasn't. It just, maybe to them I was, but I wasn't.
I'm so glad you said that, Kayla, because I feel like parents often adopt the language that's been given to them by clinicians and educators and so forth, because, people change. All people who, no matter how they are, if a person is, even if it's a person that's going to be non-speaking as a child and an adult, they're still changing. They're not the same human being at the same spot. We all develop, we might develop differently, and you haven't gotten better. You've changed. So now you've gained an additional way of communicating that was different than before, but you were always better. And so I think people say things without thinking about the connotation behind it. And that's why, I was glad that Amy addressed things like high and low. Like, who wants to be high, the high person? Who wants to be the low person? Because if you're so high, you're on a pedestal. So that means you should be able to do everything. And if you have needs, or if you're confused, then that's a problem. If you're low, no one wants to look at the strengths and the abilities that you have, and they just make negative assumptions. So things like that are harmful. And I just feel like, and that's why I don't like nonverbal either, because I'm personally very verbal. Most of the people I know who are non-speaking, they are the most verbal people I know. They write some really, really long things, and they're very, very eloquent. And so I think that there is no look to autism. I hope people will start to be, no one would come up to somebody and be like, oh, wow, you're Jewish? I would have never known, because that's offensive, or, oh, you're a size 7. I would have never known, like whatever. You don't do that to people, so that people learn. I know they mean well, like you said, Kayla, they're coming from a place of love, and same thing you said. So it's like, you don't want to be harmful, but I'm hoping that people will learn more respectful things to say, like, oh, okay, well, I bet he's going to be a great kid, or he's very enthusiastic, or whatever. Say, by all means, we love to talk, we love for people to say things about our kids, great positive things, to say something, but don't make it seem like they're going from 0 to 100. They're already at 100, because our kids are already perfect. They're the way
there's going to be a different 100 at every stage in life. So it's a matter of understanding. So with that, do you guys have anything else to add, or anything that you want to kind of like give like a one-liner or something like that for the people who are watching us? And then I'll just say my thank yous to all of you for being here, and then we can just wrap up.
I just want to say, yeah, I know Monica has to go soon, so I just want to say, like, thank you for having me, and please, like, just like accept us, acceptance, not awareness, of autism. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Kayla, for being here with us today. Morenike, do you have a one-liner for us?
I just want to tell everybody that there's a Kayla Smith in the book that Kayla was reading says, you were already born right the first time. And that's what I think about every human being. You're already born right the first time.
That's strong.
Yeah.
Tanya, do you have a one-liner for us as a mom, as a parent?
I guess the one liner is, listen to what they have to say, whether it be verbally or non-verbally. Listen and go with your gut. I think we get so pressured to do what's accepted, but not necessarily what's right.
I think that's perfect, ladies. You guys have given us an amazing insight today. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. This will be aired on April 29th, and I hope a lot of people can join us. I would ask you all to promote it in your own circles as well. And I'm just so very grateful to all of you. Thank you very much. Have a good day, you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.